Thank you for joining me for this brief video that walks you through performing a multi-channel pipette calibration using the MVS system with the ArtelWare software application. I've got a lot of information to share with you, so let's go ahead and get started. Prior to performing this multi-channel pipette calibration, I've created my pipette entry, and I've also created a pipette calibration plan. If we quickly take a look at this calibration plan, you can see that my multi-channel pipette calibration is going to be based not only on the overall statistics, but also on the specific channel statistics for my evaluation criteria. This is an 8-channel pipette, so it's important for me to know whether or not one of those 8 channels is not performing well. If we click on the Dispense Steps tab, you can see that I'm going to be testing this pipette at 3 different volumes. This is a 10 to 100 microliter variable volume pipette. I'm going to be calibrating it at 10 microliters, represented with these 10 sets of replicates on this first plate, and then I'm also going to be testing 10 replicates of 50 microliters. So you can see that those 10 replicates at 50 microliters are represented by the purple columns on the first plate and the purple columns that are on the second plate as well. Last but not least, I'll be testing or calibrating this pipette at 100 microliters. You can see my 10 replicates consist of the last 4 columns in the second plate and the first 6 columns of this plate. In addition, I've created a schedule for my pipette where I've taken my pipette and I've married it to that 100 microliter variable multi-channel calibration plan that we just took a look at. You can see this pipette is due today on December 11th. And its next due date, once it's completed, will be 6 months from today. Let's go ahead and log in as an operator so that we can see the multi-channel pipette calibration workflow as it's intended by default within the software. You can see that I'm logged in as operator 1. Operators by default have minimal permissions. They have the ability to calibrate pipettes and verify automated liquid handlers. Today, of course, I'll be calibrating a multi-channel pipette. There's several different ways that we can begin this pipette calibration. We can click on the pipette on the do bar, confirm the details on this screen and click Start Calibration. We can click on the Calibrate Pipette shortcut, but it's important that once you get to this screen to know whether or not your pipette's associated with a schedule. If it is, always make sure that you select Schedule Calibration when you're in this screen. Another way is to click on the calibration icon located on the far left side navigation panel. Again, from here, there's options to perform an ad hoc pipette calibration as well as a scheduled pipette calibration. So again, it's important to know, is your pipette associated with a schedule in ArtelWare? My favorite way to begin a calibration is to click on the Scan Barcode shortcut. I've generated a barcode ID label for my pipette. I'm going to go ahead and scan that barcode ID label, and now I'm being presented with a few different options. I can perform a schedule calibration, I can view results, I can edit the device or view the device. I'm going to perform a schedule calibration today, so let's go ahead and click on that box. Next, I'm being asked to confirm, is this the pipette? Is this the calibration plan? And is this the frequency of the schedule that I have this pipette associated with? It's all correct. So let's go ahead and click on Start Calibration. From here, I have to select the MVS instrument that I'm going to use. The one I'm using is already highlighted, so I'll click OK. Next, I'll follow the ArtelWare software prompts to scan all of the solutions that I used for this pipette calibration. You can see that this first dispense step is 10 microliters, and I need to use MVS QualiSure Solution B. Let's go ahead and scan that solution. This next volume is at 50 microliters, and that's QualiSure Solution A. I'll go ahead and scan that solution, and then I'll go ahead and scan the diluent bottle. Next, I'll scan my first verification plate. Now, you might remember there were 3 plates that I'm going to be testing in total in order to perform this multi-channel pipette calibration. So I'm going to scan the first verification plate, and then I'll follow the prompts. You can see in this screen that it's telling me that the first 10 columns of this plate represents my 10 microliter volume test. I need to have it filled with 10 microliters of QualiSure Solution B and 190 microliters of diluent. The last 2 columns begin the start of my 50 microliter replicate test. You can see that the last two columns should be filled with 50 microliters of QualiSure Solution A and 150 microliters of diluent. Also in this screen I have a couple of options. I can choose to record the environment, record the pipette tips that were in use for this calibration. I can skip the shaking step, or I can start the shaking step. Now, when it comes to the shaking step, depending on your permissions, you might have the ability to edit the speed and the amount of time that the shaking step requires. I'm going to go ahead and leave the default settings as is. I've already placed my plate onto the shaker, and I'll select Start Shaking. You can see that the screen shows me shaking plate 1 of 3. At any time, I can abort the calibration. All right, the shaking step for my first plate has been completed. I've inserted the verification plate into the plate reader, and I'll go ahead and click on Start Reading. Okay, my first plate has finished its analysis in the plate reader. I'm now being prompted to scan my second plate. You can see that I've scanned my second plate, and now I'm being guided to make sure the first 8 columns of the plate are filled with 50 microliters of QualiSure Solution A and 150 microliters of diluent. The last 4 columns should be filled with 100 microliters of QualiSure Solution A and 100 microliters of diluent. Let's go ahead and shake this plate also. You can see that on this step, ArtelWare is telling me that I'm shaking plate 2 of 3. Okay, my shaking step is now complete. I've gone ahead and placed that verification plate into the plate reader, and I'll start the reading. Okay, the analysis of my second plate is complete. Now I'm being prompted to scan my third and final plate. On this third and final plate, you'll see that I'm being asked to fill the first 6 columns with 100 microliters of QualiSure Solution A and 100 microliters of diluent. Let's go ahead and start the shaking for this last plate. Okay, the shaking of my third plate is complete. Let's go ahead and start its analysis. Okay, the analysis of my third plate is complete. You can see that ArtelWare is indicating that the pipette calibration is completed. Now, because I'm a 17025 accredited laboratory, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Record Environment box. Let's go ahead and record the environmental conditions for temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure, and click OK. I also have the option to record the pipette tip that was in use for this pipette calibration. These pipettes are only used with one tip type, so I don't need to do that today. But I do have an option of adding a comment. Let's go ahead and add a generic comment here. You can see that I've added a generic comment. I'll go ahead and click OK. And now I'll select Finish. Because I have the Compliance Suite add-on module for ArtelWare, which provides me the 21 CFR Part 11 compliance with electronic signatures and audit trail, I'm now being prompted to enter my credentials as Operator 1. I'll enter my credentials and select Sign. Now I'm being prompted to select a reviewer to review this calibration data. By default, ArtelWare wants the reviewer to be someone different than the operator. You can adjust that, but in my particular lab, a reviewer has to be someone other than me that's reviewing this data. I'll go ahead and click Send. And now we can see that we've got our pipette calibration report. You can see at the very top of this report, I've actually customized my report name. That's covered in another video. If you click on the Change Report View options, you can select Show Heat Map. I like the heat map option because it tends to give me a quick visual view of any patterns or trends that might be important. So now we can see our pipette calibration report. All of the information that you would expect to see about the pipette, where it's located, who its owner is, as well as the unique calibration ID, the calibration plan that was used, and the next due date, which is not available yet because this report has to be reviewed in order for that to calculate. If we scroll down a little bit further, you can see that my evaluation criteria is taking a look at inaccuracy and imprecision, and that I also want to take a look at specific channel statistics. Now we can see in this report information for Dispense Step 1. Dispense Step 1 contains a target volume of 10 microliters, 10 replicates. It tells me the solution type that was used, and it also gives me information about the plate shaking sequence. We can see the volume statistics for the overall plate of an accuracy of -1.46 and imprecision of 1.32, which are well within the tolerances that I had pre-established for this pipette. If we scroll down a little bit further, we can see the channel statistics. Channels 1 through 4 are a little bit higher than channels 5 through 8. So that's a little bit interesting. But we can also see inaccuracy and imprecision statistics per channel, and each of the channels passed. So I'm pretty happy about that. I can also take a peek at dispense order statistics. Now, these are still displayed, but my pass or fail criteria is not based on the dispense order information. So we'll go ahead and keep scrolling. And now we can see the well by well volumes for the 10 microliter test that I performed. It shows you plate 1, and it gives you the verification plate number that was used for that particular plate. So one thing that I'll point out that's of interest to me is you can see that F9 delivered a little bit lower of a volume. And then we can see that F10 delivered a little bit higher of a volume. We can tell because blue represents lower volumes, pinks and reds are the higher volumes. I suspect that there was probably some residual in the pipette tip that was left over in the tip on F9 that then got carried over to the well in F10. Let's go ahead and keep scrolling and take a look at the second dispense step, which represents the 50 microliter test for this pipette. You can see again the number of replicates per channel, QualiSure solution type that was used, and we see the plate shaking sequence for plates 1 and 2. You might recall that the start of this test was in one plate, and the remainder of the test was performed in a second plate. Once again, you can see my overall volume statistics for all of the replicates that I took. Once again, well within tolerance. We can also see the channel statistics. Again, for each of those 8 channels in this 8-channel device, all of the channels passed their individual tests. I'm pretty happy with that as well. We'll skip over the dispense order statistics. And we'll take a look at the first plate results. And scroll down a little bit further and take a look at the second plate's results. We can see this is a little bit interesting of a pattern. The first couple of dispenses seem to be low, whereas the last 8 dispenses tend to be a little bit higher. That's interesting, but again, I'm not too concerned. Let's go ahead and take a look at dispense step 3, my last and final volume for this multi-channel pipette calibration. This is the 100 microliter test, 10 replicates, again using QualiSure Solution A and 2 plates that are in play because I have some replicates that were performed in one plate and replicates that were performed in another plate. If we take a look at the overall statistics for all of the data, we're once again well within specification with an accuracy of -0.66 compared to its tolerance of 6% and imprecision of 0.27 compared to its tolerance of 6% there as well. If we take a look at the channel statistics, all of the channels look pretty good. They've all passed their statistics or well within the 6% tolerance that I set. We'll skip over the dispense order statistics and we'll head on down to the actual plate so we can see the volumes that were dispensed into the plate. Here's the first plate and here's the second plate. Overall, things look really good. If I continue to scroll, I see some additional information. You might recall that I entered some environmental information because I'm a 17025 accredited laboratory, and that's required for my calibrations for my pipettes. So the information on the environment is there, as well as the information on all the materials that I used and what specific dispense steps those materials were used in. If I continue to scroll, you'll see that the operator comment, that generic comment that I entered earlier, is also reflected here, and information about my MVS instrument itself, its serial number, when it was last calibrated, the unique calibration ID, the baseline plate ID, information about the shaker, and last but not least, you can see my electronic signature by operator 1. You'll also see that this approval status says pending approval. That's because my reviewer has to log into the software and review this report. Let's go ahead and close out of the report and head back to the home screen. Let's go ahead and log out and log in as the reviewer. Now you can see that I'm logged in as the reviewer. Reviewers have a ready for review bar when items such as pipette calibrations, operator assessments, or automated liquid handler verifications need to be reviewed. There are other things that the reviewers are responsible for reviewing as well. Now, if you have the optional email notification feature of ArtelWare installed, the reviewer can receive an automated email from the system letting them know that there's a calibration report that has to be reviewed. Let's go ahead and click on these 2 calibrations that are ready for review. The pipette that I just calibrated is already highlighted, 02966. We can see that its report is pending because, again, it needs to be reviewed. Let's go ahead and click on View Report. Now, as the reviewer, I can also enable the heat map view, but I'm going to leave that alone for now. As the reviewer, my job is to scroll through the complete report, take a look at all the statistics, and make sure all of the values are well within the specified tolerance limits that we have defined for this particular pipette. Everything looks really good. Now, as a reviewer, I have the option to approve this calibration report or reject the calibration result. I'm going to go ahead and click on Approve. Again, I've got the Compliance Suite software add-on for ArtelWare. So I need to enter my electronic signature information. As a reviewer, I can also customize my review comment. And if I have the label printer set up and connected to the computer that I, the reviewer, am logged in on, I can click on the box for Print the Label. But I'm actually in a different building, so I'm not going to check the box for Print the Label. We'll have the operator do that later on. Let's go ahead and click Sign. Now you can see that the status of this pipette calibration report is passed, and if we scroll down to the bottom of the report, we can also see that its approval status is approved. This pipette's ready to be placed back into service. We now have the option to export the report, either to a PDF, Word, or Excel format, or we also have the option to print the report to a full-size printer. I'm not going to export or print this report, and I'm just going to have this report live in the ArtelWare database. The pipette calibration is now complete. You can see that I'm now logged in as Operator 1 again. I know that the reviewer has reviewed the data for my pipette calibration. I'm going to go ahead and click on this pipette that's been reviewed. I can see that the status of the report is passed, and I'll click on View Report because I'm interested in seeing my reviewer's comments. As the operator, I'll scroll down to the bottom of the report and I'll see the reviewer comment. They said that this looks good, so I'm pretty excited about that. You might remember that I still need to generate a pipette calibration label for my pipette now that its calibration is completed and it's been approved and is reviewed. I can create a calibration label by going to the configuration screen, clicking on the pipette section, highlighting the pipette that I want a calibration label for, and then clicking on the print label icon and selecting calibration label. And now my pipette has its calibration label and it's ready to go back into service. This multi-channel pipette calibration is now complete. That concludes my brief video. Do you have any questions? You can contact our technical support team at 1-800-225-4034 option 3 or at support@aicompanies.com. Thank you.